But the truth of the matter is that food tastes fabulous at the beginning.
Yeah.
Toward the end, we're eating a memory.
Hi, welcome back to Let Me Ask You Something, the weekly podcast where I, M.D. Pittman, talk to everyday, ordinary people about something extraordinary in their lives. Now, this week I talked to Dr. Michelle May. She is a physician and she's an author, and she talks and writes about mindful eating and what that actually means. Now, I'm going to let her explain exactly what that means because this was a learning experience for me, and I'm actually anxious to try some of the tips that she offers in this conversation, as well as on her website and her books about mindful eating. So, also a programming note, this is going to be the end of season 1. We are going to start season 2 in a couple weeks. I'm going to take a couple weeks off to refresh and to get a few episodes under my belt here before I launch season 2. So without further ado, Dr. Michelle May.
And we are live. Welcome back to episode 20 of the Let Me Ask You Something podcast, where I just talk to everyday, ordinary people about something interesting or extraordinary in their lives. And today we have Dr. Michelle May. She is a former family physician and the founder of the Am I Hungry mindful eating programs and training. But before we get into that, Dr. May, let me ask you something. Why are you a fully recovered yo-yo dieter?
You picked up on that, didn't you? You know, I started dieting when I was pretty young, actually, way before even high school. And I dieted on and off all the way through high school, college, and medical school. When I got into my private practice, I discovered that lots of people were doing this. I didn't realize that until that point. But it dawned on me that if so many of us were yo-yo dieting, maybe diets themselves are part of the problem.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I made my big shift away from that pattern into something that really works a lot better for me, so much so that I founded Am I Hungry to teach other people how to do it too.
So what exactly is yo-yo dieting? I mean, I think we all have a general idea, but what actually is the definition?
I'm glad you asked, because we do throw that term around. But the way that I think of it, I think actually the term is perfect for what happens, because when we're on the diet, the yo-yo is all wound up tight. We're following all the rules, thinking about what we can and can't eat, writing everything down and looking everything up. So we're all wrapped up on this yo-yo. Then when we get hungry or our favorite food shows up or we're stressed out, we start unraveling and heading back down toward the end. And so just like a yo-yo, you get to the end of your rope, so to speak, and you're not following the rules anymore. And so you do that for a while, and then you have to get back on the diet. So the yo-yo diet is on the diet, off the diet, getting ready for the cruise, on the cruise, right?
Getting ready for bathing suit season, and then
that's a wedding, reunion, and you pick it. It doesn't. It's just all the same thing. Something causes us to start that cycle again. Here's the problem. Is a yo-yo doesn't stop in the middle. So very few people know the walk the dog trick. So most people end up going on and off and on and off, and many of the people I work with have been doing this for literally decades, not realizing that the whole pattern is never going to result in anything except up and down, up and down, up and down.
So what did you do to fix your yo-yo, to get off that yo-yo train?
Well, first of all, I realized that it wasn't working, and that it never was going to work, and that it wasn't my fault, that it wasn't that I was weak-willed or I was doing it wrong. It's that literally restricting and depriving yourself of food causes you to crave those foods and makes you overeat them when you finally give in to them. And so it's not a matter of willpower, but there's a whole physiological system that's designed to prevent you from starving to death. And so when the body begins to feel that it's not getting what it wants and needs, we become more attracted to food. Food tastes better. It's harder to feel full. We literally rewire our whole bodies in order to prevent ourselves from starving to death, because the
Yeah, I
body
mean,
doesn't know we're doing it on purpose.
yeah, I mean, and it feels like it feels like you're a failure if you don't succeed, and then it makes you want to eat even more because you're doing guilty eating.
Absolutely. I call it the eat, repent, repeat cycle, right? Like it's just this pattern. And until I went into my medical practice and started talking to patients about this, I did not know that other people were doing the same thing. I thought it was just me. Once I realized that this is actually the general pattern, in fact, you've all heard the statistic that 95% of diets fail. That statistic's a little fuzzy, but if you really dig into the research, what they're saying is diets work just fine if all you want to do is lose weight temporarily. What happens for most people, though, is they begin weight cycling. So that's the usual outcome.
So how do you fix this problem? I mean, it seems like it's part psychological, part physiological, and I guess part willpower too, because I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong, but how do you fix that?
Yeah, it's actually not willpower at all. That was a big surprise to me. And it's a big surprise to most of the people I work with. In fact, it causes people to go, well, that can't be right, because everybody around us is telling us to control ourselves.
Yeah.
So back to that yo-yo, in control, out of control, being good, being bad. We're constantly vacillating. So what I did for myself, and then now teach other people to do, is to change the paradigm completely. So let's take the yo-yo, let it roll all the way down to the bottom, and let's turn it into a pendulum instead. So a pendulum does go back and forth, just like a yo-yo, but the difference is that when you give restrictive eating and dieting less of your energy, when you give those extremes less energy and less time and attention, the pendulum now starts to find a smaller arc in the middle. Okay. So what we're doing is we're moving away from the idea that this is about being in control to being in charge.
All right, so here's the problem. But here's the problem I see is everybody in this society is, I want satisfaction now. I want an immediate return on my investment, but that seems like it won't happen with this.
I think that's actually a really important point. So one of the things that the general name of the kind of approach I use is mindful eating. And what mindfulness is really about it's about being in the present moment, which is kind of what you're describing, right? We want what we want it now, right?
Yeah.
The thing is that many people discover that mindful eating isn't about being good, it's about feeling good. And so if we can reconnect with our body wisdom, we start to notice that I feel better when I'm hungry and I eat. I feel better when I stop before I'm stuffed. I feel better if I have one donut than if I have 4. I feel better if I have a few pieces of pizza instead of the whole thing. So what we're really doing is starting to use our own body wisdom, reconnect with the signals that we were all born with to know when we're hungry and know when we're full, and use those to guide us instead of all these rules that are so hard to follow.
Now, with this, the dieting or the healthier eating, that's one part of it. I mean, you have to be a little physically fit, or you need to get to that weight to, I guess, exercise to help lose the weight. Isn't that part of it as well?
Well, you're describing a common misunderstanding about all of this, right? Okay. So our paradigm in the world today is that if you're fat, you obviously don't eat healthy and you don't exercise. Like there's this whole stigma and bias about body sizes. The truth of the matter is you can't tell anything about a person's diet and exercise pattern by looking at them. I mean, just think of some of the people you know who live in a small body who don't eat healthy at all and don't exercise either. I mean, we have to get away from the idea that there is a direct connection, because for a lot of people that connection isn't as clear cut as we might think.
This is blowing my mind.
I
This is
know.
blowing my mind.
Like, how could this be? Although I will tell you, if that belief was actually true, if really it was true that all we needed to do was eat healthier and start exercising and everybody would be thin, then wouldn't everybody be thin? Because we've all done it many, many, many times.
Yeah.
So my approach to this is let go of the idea that weight is a direct measure of health, and let's focus on true behaviors, because weight is not a behavior. Weight is not a behavior. It's a force of gravity on this earth. So what we can do to be healthier is to, first of all, start reconnecting with the signals we were born with. If you've ever taken care of a baby or had one of your own, you know they cry when they're hungry. If they're not hungry and you're trying to force them to finish off a bottle or, finish the spoonful of food, they're going to just spit it right back at you. They instinctively know when their body needs fuel and when it doesn't. We all had that ability at one time. It's just that we forget. We learn to clean our plate. We learn to eat all of our dinner to earn dessert. And then when we start dieting, we start making foods good and bad. And we start confusing the brain. The brain forgets that it knew how to check its own fuel gauge at one point.
Yeah, because I remember when I was wrestling in high school and college, the one of the weight loss rules that we've been told was don't eat till you're not hungry anymore. Is that kind of a good rule, or?
Well, again, I don't know about for weight loss or wrestlers, but it is the idea that many people who struggle, and myself included, right? I got into this because I struggled for many years with this. Yeah. Oftentimes, when we're struggling, we're eating because we're stressed or bored or mad or sad, or it's lunchtime, or other things that have nothing to do with what our body needs.
Yeah.
And or we're having trouble stopping when we've had enough. We're cleaning our plate or trying to get our money's worth, or
because it tastes so good.
Well, and that's right. I mean, and here's the thing. My husband's a professional chef, so I love food that tastes fabulous. But the truth of the matter is that food tastes fabulous at the beginning. Yeah. Toward the end, we're eating a memory. We remember what it tasted like. We want it to taste that good. It's not going to taste that good again until we're hungry again. So if we can start getting more connected, and if we're eating while we're watching TV or working or scrolling through social media, we miss those subtle signals that say, I've had enough. I know it tastes good. I want to keep eating it, but I know if I do, I'm going to feel overly full and uncomfortable. If I put my phone down, put the food in the refrigerator for lunch tomorrow, it'll taste good then. But right now, the consequences are going to outweigh the good feelings that I have temporarily.
That's pretty profound as far as, because I mean, we're all eating in front of the TV, all eating with our phone. Is that one of the keys here that we're to unlock this?
Absolutely. So mindfulness is about reconnecting with the present moment. So in the present moment is our physical sensations of hunger and satiety, our emotions like sad, mad, glad, stressed, and bored. It's the other distractions that prevent us from noticing how our body is responding to the food. It's even the distractions that prevent us from enjoying this food we said tasted so good. It's funny. We think, oh, I love pizza. I mean, everybody loves pizza, right? I love pizza. And then we sit down and eat pizza in front of the television. So most of the time, we're not even really tasting pizza. We're watching TV. Our brain is engaged in this new activity because it's eaten pizza a million times before. So it knows what the pizza tastes like.
Yeah. Wow. That's just, it's opening my eyes to a whole new world here. Now, I guess, how do you, we're all an impatient people. As we said before, we want it now. We want the satisfaction now. How long could this take? I mean, I know people are unique, and it could take longer for somebody versus another person, but how long could this take to help them get through this program, or is there a set time frame?
Well, that's a great question. So, first of all, embedded in your question, I'll just say it out loud because I don't want to leave it unspoken. Embedded in your question might be something like, how long is it going to take me to lose X number of pounds? Right? And so I just have to say that this is not about weight loss.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean a person's weight won't change, but the honest truth is some people are suppressing their weight by not eating when they're hungry. And it's possible that if they actually start paying attention to their body will go toward what it actually wants to be. Mm-hmm. So here's the thing. Your weight is not my business. Okay. My business is helping you heal your relationship with food. If you're using food for boredom, for distraction, for comfort, for getting through the day, then I can help you with that, because it's possible to eat what you love and love what you eat and really move away from this kind of yo-yo pattern of trying to control your eating and then saying forget it, and then controlling and then blowing it off. What we really want to do is learn how to find an arc in the middle that's more flexible, where you are truly able to make decisions no matter whether you're at a party or it's the holidays or you're at work or you're at home. Whatever you're doing, you have the ability to make decisions about what, when, and how much to eat. Yeah. And to your earlier point, even about physical activity, because for a lot of people, physical activity, exercise has become punishment for eating.
Yeah.
Think about that. It's the way you punish yourself for eating something you shouldn't have, or burning something off if you ate too much. So a lot of people hate exercise because they have equated it with burning calories instead of noticing how great they feel when they do it.
Okay. Now, I want to make sure people go to your website, so I'm not going to try to do too much, but you have in here something called mindful eating training. I feel like you've hit on some of that here, but can you go a little bit more in depth in what that means, the
Sure.
training?
Yeah, there's actually two pieces of it. So there's mindful eating programs, which are for individuals who want to work on their relationship with food and learn how to do this so they don't have to keep going back on diets.
Yeah.
That's mindful eating programs. And mindful eating training is for health and wellness professionals who want to teach other people how to do that.
Okay.
So there's both of those things. So let's talk about a mindful eating program. It's kind of the structure that we use for my books, my retreats, our workshops. Everything that we do is built around a model called the mindful eating cycle. And though we didn't call it that, we've been talking about that the whole time. It's been, figuring out when you feel like eating, what you eat, how you eat it, how much of it you eat, where you use the energy that you've consumed. And so this cycle becomes the structure, the new structure for making decisions about eating. So you don't have to look up calories or grams or carbs or whatever it is that you're used to looking up. You build this structure in your own brain for making decisions about food. So typically a program would be 8 sessions. That could be 8, one session once a week in a workshop with a group. It could be an 8-hour retreat. I do weekend retreats all the time now since the pandemic. And so during the weekend, we'll go from beginning to end, and people will learn how to reform their relationship with food and make decisions differently. Yeah. And then ultimately, someone could even work with me or one of our other coaches individually or in a small group to work through the process. So it just depends on what people need.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that we do nowadays is the fast food. How does that play into this? Because fast food is like pizza. It's good to eat, and I guess is that the same type of memory you're eating, in memory of a great time you had eating a cheeseburger at McDonald's?
Well, the whole phrase fast food has its own connotations. And it really gets to what you were mentioning earlier, is that in our culture, food is like, we want it now, we want it fast, we want it to taste good, and we want to, get it over with and move on to the next thing, or eat it while we're doing something else. And so this whole idea of this frenzied eating is part of the underlying problem. Now, I have nothing against fast food. I think what most people will find through this process is that, it's not helpful to make certain foods bad and certain foods good.
Yeah.
So if you enjoy a McDonald's burger, or you enjoy pizza, or whatever your favorite thing is, fine, great. Where people have difficulty is if they are not giving any attention to the food that they eat. They're not cooking food, they're not preparing food, they're not tasting food as they're eating it. So mindfulness and mindful eating teaches them to just slow down a little bit and connect. For example, maybe you might discover that you don't really need the whole supersized value basket at your local place, because it's more food than your body really needs comfortably. Yeah. Or you might find that, you both get a burger and one of you gets fries, and that's enough for both of you. And so what happens is you begin to make decisions that aren't based on, fries are bad, but are based on, I feel better when I share my fries than if I eat the whole thing myself.
Oh, wow. You're like the Zen master of eating.
I love that. I would like to say that would be a really big goal of mine, because here's the thing. We've created a lot of angst around food in our culture. We're very, very, very lucky to have an abundance of food for the most part. Not all segments of our society have that luxury, but we do have an abundance of food. And instead of appreciating that and distributing it to people, and instead of, enjoying it, we kind of take it for granted, and we just eat as though it's not important, and then we gripe about the effects of being too full and not feeling well or having health consequences.
Now, I don't know if this is related to what you do or the impact of what you're trying to make, but I mean, we also have a lot of food waste because we're not eating everything that we think. Eyes are bigger than our stomach and all that, but so we're wasting a lot of food. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a direct part of what I do, but it certainly is an important problem that we have in our culture. And again, part of it is distribution. We're buying and preparing and serving more than we need. Restaurant portions are larger than they need to be. And part of that is because in our culture, we value quantity more than quality. Like if you go to a restaurant and they give you really big portion sizes, a lot of people think that's the best place to go.
Yeah.
Well, it might be if you actually get 2-for-1 meals out of that one meal, because it's enough for that. What ends up happening instead is part of it gets thrown away. Or the other way that we waste food is by eating it, even though our body doesn't need it. That's wasting food too. Yeah. So once you become more mindful and connected to how much your body needs, then you order less, you prepare less, you share meals, you give away food, you don't need to waste that, or you eat it for another meal. Now all of a sudden what you're actually needing is more in proportion to what you take, because it's not about getting the most, it's about feeling your best.
Yeah, great. So I like the name of the program, Am I Hungry? Why did you come up with that? How did you come up with that?
It's interesting because the whole idea, as you're probably picking up on, is about not following all the outside rules that tell you what you should and shouldn't do. It's about tuning in to the inside. So it's an inside out approach. And I found that one of the best ways for people to do that, or at least to start doing that, is whenever you feel like eating, just pause for a moment and ask yourself, am I hungry? Am I actually physically hungry? Now that means that you need to be able to tell the difference between hunger and boredom, or hunger and appetite. So appetite is, ooh, that looks good. Hunger is, I need fuel. A really good way to think about this is if you were driving down the road and you saw a gas station would you just automatically pull over and get gas? Probably not. You'd first check your fuel gauge.
Yeah.
That's what asking, "Am I hungry?" is all about. You're driving down the road, you see a fast food place, you don't just pull in, you say, "Well, no, wait a minute, that's interesting. I feel like eating. Am I actually hungry?"
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I have a memory, or I associate that. That food is good. I like that. It's convenient or cheap or whatever. And then you go, "Yeah, of course it is. And it'll still be there tomorrow. I'm not hungry right now. I'm going to keep going. If when I'm hungry, that's what I want, then I know where to go."
Are those food memories and the food and the smells that you're getting that makes you smile and is that the biggest hurdle that we face?
I don't actually think it's a hurdle. I think it's actually one of the beautiful things that happens when we learn to eat mindfully instead of going on and off diets, is that we all have deep emotional connections to food. Food connects us to each other in really powerful ways. We dine together, we celebrate together, we mourn together. That's part of the way that we use food to connect with each other and to bring back memories and other feelings. And so emotional connections to food are healthy and normal. Where they become a problem is when we use food to disconnect from our emotions, to shove down our feelings, or to comfort ourselves instead of actually dealing with whatever is going on. And so one of the things that will happen because the other emotion is deprivation and restriction. And so ironically, dieting is a big emotional trigger for overeating for many people. When we stop doing that, when we stop telling ourselves that certain foods are bad and we're bad when we eat them, now food becomes just food, or maybe delicious food, or maybe food that we ate when we were a child, but it's not up on this really magical pedestal anymore.
So, and as I said before, I want people to go to your website here. But what's one or two or three tips that you can give somebody to get started?
Well, as I said, the first thing I would do is just start checking in. Before you eat, ask yourself, "Am I hungry?" Now, I didn't say if you're not hungry, you can't eat, because that would just be another form of dieting, right?
Yes.
It's part of normal eating to sometimes eat when you aren't hungry. If you choose that, just be sure to check back in and go, "Okay, now how did that feel? Would I have enjoyed that more if I was hungry?" My grandmother used to say, "Hunger is the best seasoning." Food tastes better when you're hungry.
Yes.
And it's easier to stop eating when you're eating to satisfy hunger than when you're eating because you're bored. Because as soon as you stop eating, you're bored again, and so you have to eat again, right?
Yes.
So it just works better to use hunger. One other tip I think that's helpful and kind of related to what I just said is that sometimes people think, "Oh, I'm really, really, really hungry. I need a lot of food." No, that's not how it works. Your stomach size doesn't change just because you're really, really hungry.
Yeah.
If you're really, really hungry, it means you need to eat soon, not more. You still need the same amount of food as you might otherwise need. You just need to eat soon.
Great. So, what's something that you've learned across with this journey? I'm always about something, a learning of a lesson of some sort. But what's something that you've learned? I mean, it seems like you've learned a lot over this course, but what's something that really stands out to you?
Well, there's a saying that goes, "How you do anything is how you do everything." For me, what I realized in this journey is that how I was doing food was kind of how I was doing life. And so when I stopped doing it all, collapsing, trying to be perfect, forget it. When I stopped doing that extreme kind of thing, what I found is that if I can approach situations with curiosity and non-judgment and awareness and learning instead of failing, that concept of trying things, seeing what works, trying something else, seeing what works, taking small steps, and reconnecting with myself, oh my gosh, it's so much more fun than trying to be perfect and then giving up on everything.
Yeah.
So how I was doing food was kind of how I was doing my life, and I feel like I have a lot more balance now.
Well, great. Well, that sounds like a perfect place to end. And we did not color coordinate before we met or before we talked, so we just happened to like blue today. So, Michelle, I appreciate the time, and I'm going to try some of this stuff. I want to get on your website. I want to see what I can do to have a better relationship with food and be more mindful with how I am eating. So I appreciate the advice, the tips, the conversation here.
Well, if people will go to the website, I don't think we said it, but it's amihungry.com.
And I'll link it in the show notes.
Perfect. So amihungry.com. And I think one of the things you can get there that's really helpful is a free download of chapter 1 of my book, Eat What You Love, Love What You Eat. When you read that book, you're going to know whether this is an approach that makes sense for you. You'll read that one chapter and you'll say, okay, yeah, I could use this, or yeah, no, this isn't going to be helpful. So yeah. I would say take advantage of that, because that's a great way to check it out.
Well, I think just this conversation makes me want to check it out. So, Dr. May, thank you very much for your time.